Hey, and welcome guys. Today we have on the bench the re-released Star Wars TIE Fighter, the old AMT kit, released by Round 2 with some modifications. Now I looked up, this scale is supposedly 1/48 scale. It says it has updated wing tooling, so I guess the wings are different, authentic detail with optional clear parts. It includes a fighter pilot. I don't know if I've ever built this model before, so I'm not sure if that's updated or not. It kind of has the retro boxing in it. Really simple kit. The kit only has 29 parts, so pretty straightforward build, as you can see here. At 1/48 scale, it's a really nice size. I have opened this up and looked at it real quick, so you can see here kind of the size of the cockpit and the pilot here. So it does look to be somewhere in the neighborhood of 1/48 scale. So it does not include a display base, so that's okay. I'm actually working on making my own display bases. I have been using the 4-inch PVC end caps, kind of painted to hold my batteries and whatnot. It's worked fine. It just doesn't have a lot of detail, a lot of visual interest. So I wanted to make something where when I'm not trying to do a scenic display base, have some kind of base that has at least some visual interest. So I went on Tinkercad, and this is my own design, and this is the first prototype. I've had some, obviously, there's some things I want to correct with it, and there were some flaws on how I had it sliced and print. It went way too thick, and I've actually printed out a separate one. That I've cleaned up a lot of this inside here and thinned out the walls a little bit, but just to give it some visual interest, kind of give it that Star Wars look. No real rhyme or reason to all these things. Now as far as the openings here, those are going to be for obviously our rod that holds our model. Now I'm not going to be lighting this one. It's a basic model. I did Darth Vader's TIE Fighter not too long ago. I lit. Really all you could do is like put a light inside the cockpit and the two engines, and I think I'm just going to build and paint this one. And however, on the display base here, I'll be able to adjust the size when I go to print this out, when I go to slice it, and then I'll add in the holes when I'm slicing to make sure to adjust to whatever size pole and switch, and of course I'll have room for the battery. So that's my own design. Did it on Tinkercad really quickly, and that's really heavy. It should be plenty for these, and cost-wise it should only take a couple dollars worth of resin, if that, once I get it cleaned up and thinned out and the walls thinned down, and it'll be my own design. It'll be hopefully have some visual interest to it. So anyway, when we get started on building this, probably the first thing I'll do is pick out these wings, assemble the different parts, paint the whole thing black, and get these wings masked off. All right, as you can see here, I've completed the inside of the cockpit. Pretty standard for these models. They have like these 5 different sections that kind of surround the pilot. The pilot was, I believe, 4 pieces, and you can see I kind of painted him up. I just painted him some flat and black, and then did some chrome and red highlights, and attached it to his seat now, and then took some super glue and glued his hands down to make it his controls actually attached to the seat. A little bit of painting, some washes to kind of bring out the detail. A lot of it's not going to be seen. It'll be inside there. It'll be pretty dark. But just a little bit of detailing for that. Not a bad looking figure. Not great, but not bad. Probably better than what it used to be. So at this point, we need to attach our cockpit to the inside of the fuselage. And I had to trim away some sections here because there was a not fitting in very well, and on my particular kit, as you can see here, it's got a pretty good bow to it, which is going to be easily fixed once we glue it down. You can see how much that's bowing out. We'll just have to make sure and glue that down tight. Now my plan is to kind of set this in here without gluing it, because when you attach the fuselage, you want to see how you want to make sure that it's positioned correctly. So my plan is to kind of glue that into place and then position it, and then I'll put some super glue on the inside here to kind of hold it in. It'll probably be held in pretty good once I glue this in, but it's kind of hard to tell. It has some little marks for where this is supposed to sit. It's just really hard to see how well that's supposed to sit in there, and I want this centered pretty nicely inside that cockpit. So that's the plan for that. So I'm going to get that attached and we'll get this all glued up. Alright, so I'm masking off our TIE Fighter wings here. Now we have a lot of panels to do. There's 6 on each side, 12, so 24 panels. Had some odd shapes. So basically 2 different shapes. You have these more regular type triangles on the top and bottom of the panels, and then you have these that are kind of in flipped, but they're basically the same shape and reversed on the sides. So the easiest way I found, I'm going to be using this Surface Delicate Scotch tape found at hardware stores. This works pretty well. Like I said, it's delicate, so it doesn't tend to pull up any paint. I never had any issues with it. Now, if I was doing something really fine detail, like a canopy or something, I'd probably go ahead and use this modeling masking tape, which is designed for doing that kind of work. However, this is going to be quite expensive compared to this, where you get large rolls for $4 or $5. So and you have to cover a lot of area like we do on this panel. So anyway, I've laid out some strips, and basically on these small panels, I can get it done with this 2 strips of tape and 3 or 4 basic cuts. So I first cut out a length that's going to be long enough to cover this main area here. So my first one, I'm just going to line it up on this nice edge. And most of these TIE Fighter wings do have a nice lip to go by, so it's pretty easy. So I'll line this up to make sure it covers this area right in here and all the way here. So I'll get that in there. And then kind of press it in place with my finger. And I take a toothpick. I actually have a little bit of super glue blobbed on the end, so it won't be as pointy, and also it lasts longer. And I'm going to use that to start kind of pressing this tape in into the panel lines here, or the detail wall where I'm going to be making my cut. I find that the rounder edge with that little bit of super glue doesn't dig into the tape, and it does more pressing it in. You do want to spend a little time kind of making sure that your tape is pressed in, especially on the corners, to kind of minimize paint bleed. Paint will find a way, so kind of expect some paint bleed here and there. That's just the nature of it, but you can minimize it by making sure that's pressed in. But now once I have that in, as you can see, I got my cuts laid out. Of course, you want a new sharp blade. And I'm just going to follow that all the way. Gives us a nice line in there. Now I can do this one. I'm going to do it in one cut. I'm going to go all the way to the angle and then bring it back. Now we have a cut there. So now all we have is this section. So we basically just need one piece. And with this piece, I'm just going to go on this edge right here. Make sure that's lined up. And kind of repeat this process. And there we go. 2 pieces of tape, 3 cuts, and we have a nice masked off panel. And just repeat that. Now on these bigger ones, you will have a tiny little gap. It won't quite cover, so you can just take like a scrap piece of tape that you just cut and fill in the gap, because you will have a gap. But for most of these, you can do it in 2 pieces of tape. And as you can see here, that's kind of quick, at least as quick as I can get it. It is a process. You have to just kind of be patient with it. But to me, masking it off really gives it a nicer look, unless you're just really good at stage line painting. I'm not. I'll always go up and over. It always shows. So it's kind of worth the work of masking it off. So I'm going to finish up this panel, and we're going to get on to This one's already done in black. I have to do, my fuselage is all glued and together. You can see where I've masked off the front of it. I'm going to leave off the screen here, which I've already painted a dark green color. I'm going to leave that off and just paint over this. I'm going to leave the hatch off since it has vents. I'm not using the glass. I don't want paint spraying there, so I'll paint that differently. An easy way to make a mask for that is just lay out a couple strips of tape, put this over it, draw around it, and cut it, and then you have a nice little mask for that. So easy way to do that. The fuselage came together pretty well. Just a little bit of cleanup. I had a little bit of gaps right here. That just a little bit of plastic putty, and I used for the first time this plastic putty from Vallejo, and it worked fine. And I had to kind of do some of these right where this connects right in here a little bit more. I have a little bit more cleanup to do. You can see where there's some putty still there. But I'll be doing a black primer coat over that, and then we can get to our base coat. All right, as you can see here, I have on my black primer coat, have my model all put together. I figured this would be easier to kind of paint the wings attached. That way I wouldn't be trying to grab them, and I can just hold this support rod as I start painting it. It's primary color. Everything's looking pretty good. I think the seams are pretty well dealt with, and they're not too bad even when you put them together. Just a little bit of cleanup other than maybe some of these edges and there's a few gaps that we had to take care of. And so then it's actually a pretty nice looking model now that it's all coming together. Pretty happy with it. I have my other pieces. The only other piece that'll be painted separately will be, of course, the hatch. I've already painted the screen to the canopy. Now I almost threw away, there are a couple other parts, I almost threw away these tiny little your laser emitters or blaster emitters. They're really small and they almost look like connecting points. Fortunately, I didn't throw it in my garbage and realized what I'd done, so I was able to retrieve them. So tip there, never empty your garbage till after a model is completely done, or you might just throw away something. I'll probably just paint these up silver and attach them later after I paint everything, and just use some super glue when I do that. So there's all the parts. Now for the base coat, I'm going to try to use this Blue Echo. It's kind of a gray blue color. It's going to be a bit darker than that, going onto a black primer coat. But that's okay. I'll probably try to do some shading effects and stuff once we get that done. So I'm going to go ahead and put this on, and we'll see how that looks. All right, here's my paint job on. Again, using the Folk Art Blue Echo. This thinned down with this regular water and strained, and then applied with an airbrush. Very thin coats, just kind of multiple passes, kind of spraying over and over, not trying to get built up any too heavily in one place, but eventually it kind of gives a good coat and settles in and levels off. Now I did put a clear protective matte coat on it to kind of protect that paint. I still haven't quite connected all these parts. So let's look at our masking job and see how that came out. And we'll just remove some of these panels here, or excuse me, move the tape here. And it's always satisfying to see a clean line once you remove your masking tape. Very nice. Oops. Trying not to dig into my paint job here. looks really good. Really happy with how panels came out. Of course, I've already moved the tape on this side, so I got to remove these inners. But really like the contrast with the black and blue. That really makes the TIE Fighter kind of stand out. There's some really nice detailing on these. I think these are retooled wings, these solar panels. You have some very fine detail lines in there, so really nice job on that. So from here, I'm going to move the tape. I'll probably connect all my parts since most of my painting's done now. And probably move into just some accent color lines on some of these panel lines here. All right, well, here's our finished AMT TIE Fighter, the re-released from round 2 old kit. This is actually a very nice kit. It has a few little gaps you'll have to fill in, but the seams really aren't that bad. They're easy to hide, and it has some really nice detail. The upgraded, I believe their solar panels are really nice. A lot of fine detail on the solar panels, and it's a really nice size. I believe it's something like a 1/53rd scale. Excuse me. And finished up with a little bit more weathering than normal for a TIE Fighter for me. I kind of imagine it as kind of a post-Empire TIE Fighter, something you maybe see in something like The Mandalorian or something along those lines. Anyway, highly recommend it if you like these TIE Fighters, and it was a fun project. It doesn't take a long time. You can put some lights if you want to do something to that. I chose not to. So anyway, hope you've enjoyed the build. Until next time, everybody have a good one.